Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Wendy and I'm with Inspire Ministries, and I'm so glad that you are here today. Today I want to talk to you about something very practical. I believe that it will be very helpful and beneficial to you in your walk with Jesus and as you think about how you pray, how you talk to God, what kind of questions do you ask Him, and how you can participate in the redemptive work that He wants to do in your life. So if this is a video that interests you, let's just hop right in. For some time now, I have been in this process of being refocused in my prayer life. I have really focused, I believe, on a new way to approach the questions that I ask God. Because what I realized several years ago is that sometimes I'm asking the wrong question. When I have a conversation with God, sometimes I am asking the why question, and sometimes the why question doesn't get answered this side of eternity. I ask things like, God, why is this happening? Or why has this thing happened? And again, sometimes the why question is never really answered this side of eternity. Sometimes the why question really isn't for me to know. Scripture tells us that His ways, God's ways, are not our ways. The way that He chooses to work, the way that He chooses to do things are different than we would often choose for ourselves. And it tells us this in Ecclesiastes 11:5 out of the Living Bible. It says this: God's ways are as mysterious as the pathway of the wind and as the manner in which a human spirit is infused into the little body of a baby while it is yet in its mother's womb. Mark 4 tells us this incredible story of the disciples who were in a boat during the storm, and they were in the boat with a sleeping Jesus. Many of us are familiar with this story. After they awoke Jesus in the midst of this storm, after they woke him up and he calmed the winds and the waves, they responded with terrified spirits, and they asked each other, "Who is this man that even the winds and the waves obey him?" And that's according to Mark 4, verse 41. In looking at the storm, they were all filled with fear. And I too recognize within myself this sort of dread and discomfort when I look to the mounting circumstances surrounding my life. Maybe you do too. But believers, listen, believers are to be looking for the storms, as Scripture tells us that they are inevitable. According to John 6:33, Jesus tells us that in this world you will have trouble. But it's also very clear in the Scriptures that we are to be looking for the storms. We are to be aware and awake and praying at all times. In 1 Peter 5:7, Scripture tells us to be sober-minded and watchful. In other words, to watch where there is places of danger, watch where we really have to be on our guard as believers in Jesus. Luke 21:36 records that Jesus says, "Keep alert at all times and pray." So Jesus was in the boat with His disciples, and they were completely terrified. They were really confused as to who this man was who was able to not only calm the spirit within themselves, but calm the actual physical storm that was surrounding them. But I want to suggest to you today something different. Perhaps in our looking for the storms, we can do so only for the discovery of solutions. A solution where, regardless of the outcome, I am and you are saying yes. Yes to whatever it is that He has given. Yes to whatever circumstances that we are placed in. Regardless of my knowledge of why, back to that question that sometimes is never asked this side of eternity, regardless of my knowledge of why, I can move forward by asking God, even though I don't understand. I don't need to understand. But will you make my role in your redemptive process clear? I started thinking about this a few years ago. What is my responsibility when I pray? What is my responsibility when I ask God to do something and I clearly say, even if you don't do it, I'll still serve you? I think that we have to begin to look at things that are happening in our life and take responsibility for how we can play a role in the redemptive process. The disciples that were in that boat, right? The disciples were exposed to the storm. They were. That was a reality. They were in the midst of a very trying and challenging storm. So they were exposed to the storm, but not at the expense of Jesus' departure. They had him in the vessel with them the entire time. I don't know if we've even thought about that part of the story. Jesus sleeping in a boat during a storm, and they were terrified. And yet they had the redeeming solution with them in that boat all of the time. And I see it clearly now. I see it clearly now that when the students of Jesus focused on the problem, they saw only the pain it was producing and not the fruit he was looking to develop in them. Once they shifted their eyes to the problem solver, their perspective was recalibrated, and they came out of the trial with an increased awareness of who this Jesus was, and they possessed an increased admiration of him. And so it got me thinking, can I seek with a new objective starting today? Can I think about this moving forward? God, what are you doing? How are you working? Where are you working? And because I know the ambition of your heart, God, and I know that it's always to increase my faith, and it's always about the manifestation of my commitment, would you make clear my role in your work? If there is to be a responsibility that I am to have in this work of redemption, would you make it clear? You see, I believe that I am and that you are a co-laborer this side of eternity. And I don't want to miss, I don't know about you, but I don't want to miss an opportunity to multiply the improvement of my heart and my effectiveness for his kingdom. And so I started to kind of just think about the practical things that are happening in my life. Maybe you want to do the same thing. Maybe you look in your world today and you see only a grim reality of the circumstances that you are in. Maybe you see a job loss. Maybe you see a friendship disintegrating before you. Maybe you see a financial difficulty. Maybe you look out in the world and you see just this terror that we are all feeling in terms of what is happening in our world at the current moment in time. Maybe you think about our government and just all of the trials that we've faced in our government. Maybe you think about the fact that you haven't yet been able to find a church home and you've been looking for one for a long time now. Maybe you are going through some sort of illness or you've had some sort of physical setback in your life. Maybe you've gotten some really bad test results and you've got some bad news that you are facing and you don't know how to do it. Instead of asking God, why? Why is this happening? Why do I have to go through this? Why here? Why now? Why me? Instead of being a victim to our circumstances, perhaps we can become victorious in our circumstances by just reshifting or recalibrating the way that we think. So I want you to begin to ask God, instead of why did this happen, ask God, what are you doing? What is it that you are trying to say to me? What are you doing? How are you working? Where are you working? And what is it that you want me to do to participate as a co-laborer in my victory? So maybe what you could do starting today is begin to just make a list. And for your convenience, I have listed down in the description box below a link that will take you directly to a free printable for this. It's just, what are you doing, God? It looks just like this. And it's a way for you to begin to see what kind of circumstances that you are facing in your life, what kind of situations that you find yourself in, and then ask God, what is God revealing to me about my responsibility? So for instance, you could say, what I see happening in my life is that we just went through a job loss. My husband lost his job. So maybe you write that down. My husband lost his job. And maybe instead of asking God, why did this happen? You can shift from, okay, God, what are you doing in this? What is it that you are trying to say? What is it that you're trying to get me to see in this situation? What way do you want to open my eyes? What ways are you trying to mold me and shape me and refine me in this challenging situation? Can we begin to do that today? Because listen, friends, I don't know that the answer for why something has happened is ever given to us this side of eternity. I'm not sure if we ever would be satisfied with why it's happening, but I do know that God is always moving, that God is always speaking, that God is always doing something that will ultimately bring Him glory, and it's working it out so that I get the best benefit in my spiritual advancement. And so I want us to look at things with a new set of eyes today. Can we co-labor with God this side of eternity? Can we look at these lists of things that are happening to us? Again, job loss, maybe it is a relationship dysfunction, maybe it is just a financial difficulty, maybe it is a physical health setback that you've had, whatever it is that you're going through. I want you to begin to just write down what you see happening. And then in the other column next to it, I want you to put down what God is revealing that is my responsibility in this. What do you want me to do? How do you want me to begin to change how I'm thinking? What do you want me to see? What are you trying to get me to pay attention to so that I can begin to work on that area in my life? So can we begin asking God today, what is it that you're doing? Where are you moving? What is it that you're trying to say? How are you trying to refine me? And what do you want me to learn from all of this? What is my responsibility in this? Maybe it's praying more. Maybe it's loving more. Maybe it's showing more grace. Maybe it's stretching me to trust more, to forgive areas that I haven't been able to forgive yet. Whatever it is, pray that God would reveal those things to you so that you can begin to do the hard heart work that is necessary in following the Lord. Friends, I hope that this has been a practical, applicable lesson for you today. I'm so grateful that you have been with me. If you haven't done so already, would you subscribe to this channel, become a part of this growing family? Would you share this message with someone who you know and love? Also, give this message a huge thumbs up down below. That helps the algorithm more than you know. And would you also consider hitting that notification bell below to be notified for every time that I upload content, just like this one. And between now and my next video, friend, I pray that you have an awesome day with Jesus. Bye, guys.